Argo, RSI, Anvil, and Drake. Oh my. More IAE testing in the halls tonight. Wanted to start off with the MPUV Cargo as a reminder that this capsule will be interchangeable and it has a seat in the cargo one. And then you have, of course, the personnel one that has a whole bunch of seats on both sides. As a reminder, they're going to be interchangeable. Now, in the back of the MPUV area, I noticed that there's extra space for a third MPUV, possibly. For example, one with the tractor beam. I don't know. I'm going to avoid trying to build up too much hype here, but I could see a space there. I wanted to note that that area there also is designed the same way, and I don't think there's going to be another snub fighter. Now, on to even more interesting things. The Consolidated Outlaw and Hoverbikes are put in a weird arrangement, almost like they're pointing back towards a set here, unless they were just accidentally backwards. The hover quads are on just signaged on the one side, and on every other one of these where it's just already completed, they put the signage that explains, like the small little blurb boxes on both sides, both directions path of entries could follow. There's one right where I'm standing that normally would have the little blurb box as well, but it's not there. So I can't help but think that maybe the MCV, the mobile construction vehicle trailer, may be a consolidated outland type technology. And onto consolidated outland technologies, we have the Pioneer here. Now, when their CEO, when he came on stage and Kroner had all of those people excited, he showed this Pioneer and he made it like as if it was a brand new technology. It's the first thing that a megacorp can offer to anyone, and now anyone can build their own outpost. And this thing was the key, the start of the entire thing. Unless they retcon that entire intro video for the Pioneer, one of my favorite intro videos ever made for Star Citizen. This thing started it, and the technology is consolidated outlands. So the trailer, it's a key word that is designed, that we've seen at CitizenCon, may be a consolidated outlands trailer that can then be attached to something like the Anvil Spartan, even though it has the back door that we talked about before, or other Atlas platform vehicles. So these larger vehicles that can then trailer it, or maybe even a medium-sized vehicle can handle it, even though they showed a larger vehicle towing the trailer at CitizenCon, or at least a picture of the white box of something like that. It's different. Now, on the Pioneer itself, it's supposed to be deployable. You'll notice on the front here, though, those materials, these need to go somewhere. So on the redesign, it looks like the middle does still open up, and it does have that perimeter arm on the right side, but the materials seem to be setting the tone for the entire device. There's only so much this 3D printer is going to open up. I think the top part is going to hinge open. So like it's going to more so stay together, and the hinge top is going to open up, and then those materials are going to start at the front and end at the back. That's my suspicion, 3D printer style. I don't normally do this, but I'm cutting in during editing to put this in, and I just want to mention, if you watch this clip right here and you put on the Dream of Flight from Civ 6, which I had playing in the background, not obviously in the track itself, it's really heartbreaking I can't use that type of sound and audio because it really was kind of impressive when you're walking up to the cat and just something like inspirational like that really touches you a little bit. It really is beautiful. This ship is unique. It's utilitarian. It's rough around the edges. It's a little old, but you know what? It gets the job done. And I feel like the two-handed tractor beam has reinvigorated this ship, as multiple people have commented on the feedback in the previous videos. This ship is going to be an amazing vessel heading into 3.21.1 and also 3.22, of course, because of just simply being able to finally load it with ground vehicles practically and being able to throw reasonably sized ground vehicles into all these pods. You've got 4 on the sides, with or without modules, you can use them. And yes, this one is glitched on that one side. Later on, I go to the other side and confirm it's open. But That's not the point. The point is that there are 4 matching bays on each side that are now effectively, I'm not going to call them roll on, roll off, because they're tractor beam on, tractor beam off. And then you have the front bay as well. When the modules finally do come in for this vessel, it's almost like we had to create our own solution to make it work. But I just wanted to note that. Really, really exciting times for the cat. These Drake dragonflies, and then in a minute you'll see the mules nearby, reinforce my thoughts on the idea of the hover quads being set dressing for something more, like a clever play of a company showing this brand new trailer next to some equipment we already know about, and kind of advertising both at the same time. Whereas when you look at these type of Drake dragonflies and the mules, they're all set up in an array facing outwards towards the crowds. They have multiple little signposts explaining what's inside the exhibit because it's meant to be approached from both sides. Whereas, once again, I feel that the CNOU stuff, the signage is missing from the one end because that's going to be advertising added later for the new trailer that is probably going to be using the Atlas chassis as a method to move the MCV trailer around. A tentative name, I have no idea what they'll end up calling it, but it just, I feel like there's something there. You'll note with the mules, same deal. There's signage on both ends to explain the mule. I'm talking not necessarily about the big blue signs, purple signs. I'm talking about the smaller ones at both ends that describe it, like the small paragraphs that talk about it, like the thing for the Kraken here. The Kraken is a very interesting ship. It is a space aircraft carrier with all the bells and whistles and some of the limitations you can imagine about not wanting this thing to be in direct capital ship to capital ship combat. I've talked about extensively. Obviously, we'll have to actually test it and see when we finally get our hands on these amazing, unique ship and its entire class, both in the privateer and the vanilla. I'll put in the cards a video explaining the differences between the two. But the long story short is that the privateer gains between, depending on who you ask and depending on what year we're talking about, between 10 and 16 additional habitation beds. And those habs may be doubled up habitations. So like one hab equals 2 beds, basically, in exchange for its auxiliary fuel tanks being ripped out. So on the vanilla, there's these large, nearly 2-story fuel tanks that are basically dead center of the ship above where the cargo bay is. And those are pulled out, and then stacks of habs are put in. 2 stories of habs are placed in its stead, and also a small like R&R area for the additional staff. It's meant for like the shopkeepers, security, walking around the area on the market. And I think the eventual number of habs is going to match exactly how many people are needed to make that market function at a bare minimum. But I will note that for organizations, the habs may be more valuable, especially if you don't have extremely long-range trips where you need the auxiliary fuel tanks to keep refueling your gear. With the upcoming changes to scanning, I felt I was responsible to stop by the tracker and see how it's looking. So the F7C has a modular center where you can change out for a stealth component, or you can change out for, in this case, a scanner, or even a turret in some cases. And in the case of the tracker, it has this nice dish above, and then it also has a designed system at the bottom that allows it to share like a sensor pod of information with the rest of its little squadron, what's going on out there. It gives the entire group longer distance view with its scanners. And in general, I think this is going to be quite a little bit of a looker for people who like to support but want to still stay in a fighter. And it's going to be an interesting ship. I'm not saying it's the greatest ship ever. I'm not saying it's like meta or something like that if you're looking for that, but I just wanted to note that it is a unique role for a fighter, especially if you're a fan of the Hornet series and you're just looking to have that capacity, and it's not going to break the bank. So both in game and on the website. It's not too bad on the prices. You can also note that they have still, of course, the Super Hornets and other things, but we're going to drift into the more interesting thing, and I think one of the reasons many people are, I think, getting antsy, especially post F8C. Let's talk about the unique ship in the room, and that's the F7A MK2, which has been a ship for a while that people have said this ship is gonna eventually be a thing, and then other people said no, we can never have an F7A, which is the militarized variant, not the civilian ones, because all these F7Cs, they are very advanced, capable ships, but they have been civilianized, where the UAE Navy components have been taken out or never were in there to begin with. The manufacturer came from the factory as a weakened state. Usually it's something simple, like the size of the weaponry is scaled down one size across the board or in specific places, or literally it has less weapon mounts when it comes to civilianized versus weaponized ships. But in the case of the F7A MK2, it is not scaled back. And this has been on the floor before at shows, before I get a zillion feedbacks on that. But what I will say is that this ship, it is more plausible that it will be available for sale because the F8C exists. Because the F8C is so powerful and it already exists and it's in players' hands, it is entirely plausible the F7A MK2 will be also in players' hands. Additionally, there is very, very, very old upgrades. I have one where people made a donation um, through the RSI website. They purchased this product, and then there was a donation made by RSI to a nonprofit for a good cause. Um, and in exchange, that you got this product. It was a military upgrade kit, and it was supposed to be, at one point it was going to be cosmetic, at another point it was going to actually do something. Then it was clarified that it was 3D shapes and like basically like a very advanced paint. It doesn't do anything right now, but it's designed to work across the board on all Hornets, confirmed by CIG. And it was supposed to turn an F7C, which is all the other ships in the room other than the one I'm sitting in right now. It was supposed to turn them into looking like an F7A. And that was a big deal, remember, because there was no F7As that could be in civilian hands except for one unique circumstance. I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole right now. But long story made short, except for one unique circumstance, you can't own one. Now, there was ways to get your hands on one in both questionable and just, good old-fashioned glitchy ways. But you couldn't just spawn one at the ASOP and fly it around all day, go repair it and respawn it again, etc., store it away. This thing, if it is for sale, will be the first time in Star Citizen history that an F7A will be purchasable by players, and I'm not against it. Also, I think that ancient upgrade should have its day in the sun, and the simplest answer is going to be allow that upgrade to be slightly different than the F7A MK2. Even if it's just a slight cosmetic difference, I think collectors will like that distinction and also actually get a chance to use something they've collected for so long. The other option, the obvious here, is that upgrade kit could not just be cosmetic and actually be just an upgrade kit to turn an F7C into an F7A MK2 variant of whatever version you have, if they're going to have a whole chain of these things. This might be the beginning of things to come, if this is the case. This is all speculation, but remember, post F8C, it's not out of the realm of possibility that an F7A would be on the menu. It's not that overpowered, I would argue, when you're dealing with the raw powerhouses of an even larger fighter that's even more advanced. And it would be nice to see the F7A, which is a different class, really, I would argue, of fighter, and more maneuverable, little less heavy, and actually a real pleasure to fly these things, get its day in the sun again. It would be nice to see it, maybe not be the most greatest, best fighter ever, but be very competitive. It would be refreshing to see the F7A kind of make that comeback very, very quickly. And I think in general, the Hornet series needs some work. And I think there's a lot of assets that are sitting on the Squadron 42 side that CIG would be dying to bring over. And the Hornets in general are certainly nothing to sneeze at. I'm in the right hands. They certainly could tangle with a Lightning and make them think twice, especially an F7A MK2. So that's kind of my thoughts. Is like, this one's a little out there, I know, but I'm very interested and very excited to see if CIG kind of goes that direction with this vehicle, and instead of just making it a carpet spinning type of thing to check out, make it an actual flyable ship the players can have. And I will note that you can rent. It looks like they're going to allow you to rent it. Just if you hold down F and you point it at the ship, it shows 0 UEC and it gives the little name, like as if it's going to let you rent it. That doesn't mean it will. That doesn't mean I could. I believe me, I tried every single square inch of that ship, but it just little food for thought. The Crucible is one of those ships that they said they were going to reconcept, and CIG was adamant that this thing needed to be enlarged to make it work for what it's supposed to do. And reminder, this is the side on the back here that's designed to work on bigger ships, and then it can spin its head back towards the front, and then it's supposed to have a bay that can fit, like a small vessel, and be able to fit in there. Mostly, I think, like fighters and such. That's the kind of small I mean. But even then, because of the new metrics, that area needs to be pretty large, unfortunately. This is the old flavor text of the Crucible. I still have faith that it will be fixed up. I just don't see it right this minute. This is not, I think, the year of the Crucible. So if you're waiting for it, I'm sorry. If you're still looking to get into it, you have a long time coming to grab a CCU in the next few sales, I think. Liberator looks pretty good, except it's missing its turrets. So it's man turret, and then its 2 PDSs are not on the ship. The detail is pretty good on this Liberator. I think basically it is where it is. I don't. I wouldn't read in too much for the lack of the turrets. It's just how it was built in this Holo. Maybe it'll be fixed by the live, but the Liberator will be a heck of a ship. I always recommend this ship to people to consider whenever they start talking bigger cap ships and such. I'm like, this is the ship to start with. Think carefully, like, why would you need anything more than this? Especially, like, remember, at an org level, you should always make those decisions at an org level. So when you're looking at these allocations, you can see it has a nice docking port, which is actually on an interesting design. So the Liberator on the inside has like two ships essentially built into one. The one side is the 2-person crew side, where you really can lock that off from your guests. And then that side where you saw that docking port is where your guests would come on board and off board. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really think too much about the docking port until I saw it on the Holo just then. Because when you think about the docking port, that means you can meet up with ships that can't fit on your pads. Reliably be able to just dock up, move goods, move people and crew back and forth reliably. And that's very interesting. You can ferry more unique services around. So if you just need to use your jump seats in there and your cargo area that's inside the lower level, I'd be curious to see how that connects to the docking area. Like, is there a narrow hallway, or is this something where you can easily move your significant hundreds of SCU of goods from that lower level directly through to the docking port? Because because that would be yet another capability of the Liberator, I think we constantly forget about. Legionnaire looks pretty good. It looks like it's being worked on. I wasn't able to cross-reference this with last year's or Holo and whatnot, but I'll be honest with you, the Legionnaire, I wasn't expecting it to look this built out. So regardless if it was done this year or last year, I'm feeling pretty good that this ship's coming along. This is a smaller ship. It's used for boarding. Speaking of larger ships, we got the Odyssey. And the Odyssey, to me, is like the more friendly twin of the Polaris. You're not chucking those torps. You're bringing different kinds of scanners along. You're trying to repurpose fuels. This ship's got a lot of different jack-of-all-trades situations, and I think it gets a bad rap. It has an area, you can see the docking port there, nicely arranged, right in front of the hangar. And it has an area where that cargo is, where it's in front of the hangar, and it can access back and forth, at least last time we've seen a rendering of this thing internally, where it can access directly to the hangar. So you can move goods back and forth, vehicles back and forth between those different areas. And I really like all that space. Yes, it's not like a massive warehouse, but it's a decent chunk of space between that hangar and then that split off room in the front that's kind of more designed for cargo and other services. And then you have that refinery for just your ship. It's unfortunate that it has that limitation, but I feel like it's a looker. I also feel like for certain people, it's a ship that it has a power to it that I think certain people have. Like you go to an area that has no services, you're gonna love it. The MISC Expanse seems like it's been built out dramatically. I would not be shocked. I'm not saying it'll be a flyable at this event, but I would not be shocked if 2024 is a flyable for this. And regardless of what the roadmap says, when you look at the results here, it's looking great. So more power to it if it says it on the roadmap. If it doesn't, it will be, quote, surprise, end quote, for 2024, likely. Look at those nice deployables on the sides. So that's how it handles, it moves material from, for example, ships that are coming up, like your prospectors. It takes the saddlebags, and then it's able to refine them and kick them out, and then get them over to the locations you need to get to. It looks like those little winglet things. There's a glitch right now in this build where if I use F to zoom in, it freezes up the game for a second. Those little winglet things look like they're tractor beam mounts or something like that, if I was to guess, or they're scanning arrays. One or the other. I'm still, jury's out, but I think the ship desperately is begging to have tractor beams, so I would prefer if it was tractor beams on that mount, but I don't recognize the technology. It looks almost like a scanning array on both sides, which is interesting. But anyway, if you had a tractor beam that you could throw back and forth, which I can't help but think this ship's going to obviously have, that ship's going to be quite a powerhouse. And finally, on the MISC set of Holos, you have the Endeavor, my baby. This looks pretty good. We've had teases of the Endeavor for many years now. We've had John Crew himself saying that this is the last ship that will ever be developed for Star Citizen. I think after launch, they've thrown those words around too. At least as of the ships we know now. I'm inferring based on what he said. I'm not saying every ship that's added suddenly pushes it back. But anyway, the Endeavor is a unique ship because it's two ships. The front is actually able to detach, and it's shielded extra so it can fly into closer to the sun. And that's what you see, those engines that are only a third of the way down the ship. Those big blisters that are sticking out the sides, those are engine pods for that front ship of the vessel. It has a unique role where you can get a special adapter module, which takes up one of the 3 module spaces on the ship, that allows you to detach the front, and then it can still continue to do science and other work and keep the crew happy while you fly off with the ship on the front. It's a wild ship. It can be a hospital. It can be a vessel that does constant research. It can slap a telescope on there even, or it can even overclock modules for other ships. I've said many times that this ship is vastly underrated. I've had people call me out on encouraging people to get the 10 USD CCU from the Starfarer Gemini to the Endeavor to just hold your place. I've made the case that you melt a single set of armor or a paint, get yourself a single USD, 10 USD CCU, and well, if I'm wrong, you just melt 10 USD CCU, you're out nothing. If I'm right in a few years, well, you're gonna have a good time. You can see where the expansion slots are. That's one of the 3 sets. So you see there's one there, one there, one there, and then on the other side there's a matching piece for those expansion slots. But once again, if I'm right, you're going to be way ahead eventually. So it's more of a question, are you willing to wait? And you cannot melt that CCU, because if it melted CCU, the value of it will not be realized. So what I'm also getting at here is, if it's in the Holo and the details looking okay, if they start putting out an update for the Endeavor, I'm worried that the value of this thing's going to go up. If the value of this thing goes up, the CCU game suddenly changes. So my recommendation may have to change based on how high this base ship goes. For thought. Reminder, the Endeavor CCU I'm talking about, and the entire discussion is about the Endeavor base. There are modules you need to make the ship work. My position is you can just get those in game. There is also a master set that I can talk about in a whole nother video, and I've done other ones in the past, but I can do an updated one after we see how IAE shakes out. But for now, my recommendation is, if you can get your hands on an Endeavor base for relatively cheap, or just a CCU to one for very, very cheap, it is worth it. I don't know if it's worth it for more than one, but in just my own honesty, I have a couple. Just being aware, this is on Wave 4 now on the EPTU. I'm pretty sure it'll be open to all backers eventually. And I strongly suspect it's going to eventually go from EPTU to the regular PTU, dare I say it, because it's getting to be relatively stable. I spent some time now over the past few days inside these halls, and I can say that this purple and white place is a pretty nice setup. It's kind of grown on me over time, the way it's built out. For the RSI Holos, we have the Apollo Triage, not the Medevac. So this is the less armored one that does not have the extra missiles. But it's still a obviously fully capable ship. It is modular, just like the other Apollo. Both the Apollo Triage and the Apollo Medevac are in the relatively same price point. So it's more a matter of, do you like the extra paint job and the extra armor and the missiles? Or are you going for something slightly simpler and more straightforward? Also note the Triage, because it has less armor, in the future, armor may impact your VTOL capabilities at least slightly. So do bear that in mind. So more armor might not be the best option in an extremely safe environment. So on to the Polaris. We've seen this extensively, as I mentioned before, in the Paul's stream. So when AstroPub brought us on and we did the 24-hour charity stream, I said one of the biggest problems I had with CitizenCon, it was an amazing event, but one of the biggest downsides was that they had 2 examples of things that happened that did not have disclaimers that really should have. One of them was the Polaris example. The Polaris fired a volley of 4 size 10 torpedoes and directly blew up an Idris in a single volley. And one of the things they did not show in that was that the Idris did not have a single PDS firing off, knocking out those torpedoes. We don't know how much it's going to take, but what you need to remember is that those PDSs will be locked on, and every single fighter on board the Idris, and the Idris will be firing a size 10 weapon directly at the Polaris, which is not designed to take a lot of hits. It's not meant to stand and fight. It's meant to hit and run, but it hit and run like a cap ship. So it brings up some interesting points about the balance between hit and run and stand and fight type ships that have real damage controls. Because this is going to be important. A lot of players are going to make their decisions on picking up a Polaris, the smallest combat capital ship in the game, based on some of these distinctions about what its actual playstyle is and what it can get done, and what really should be scared of it, what it can attack, what it can do. It's an excellent patrol ship. It is an interesting ship to anchor an entire small fleet around. It's going to be amazing in a lot of roles. It has all the cap services, although small cap services. Like they're small in stature and the size of what they do, servicing less people per time, for example, in the medical bay or something else, compared to larger ships. But they are there in every single facet of a cap ship, which is wonderful. Having the hangar that's been making it slightly longer than we originally intended to be able to fit fighters that people asked for and ships that people asked for to fit. And remember, you can cycle ships in and out of there. It will have a place. And even on that battlefield I described of other cap ships fighting it out and everything, if they're already engaged in fighting and burning through those PDSs, those point defense systems are being automated systems designed to kill torpedoes and missiles. If they've already burned through their ammunition on those, or they're already distracted dealing with smaller weaponry, you could actually angle a Polaris to come in, utilize its capital radar, figure out its angle, or get intel from the field that's already on the fight there, and be able to come in from an interesting angle, fire off a volley or two, get out of dodge, come back in again from another direction, harassing the enemy over and over and over again, taking out stragglers, ships that are wounded, and they managed to quantum off the field, hunting them down. Like I think the Polaris has a place, and in Van Duel fights, this ship will be excellent. But once again, if it's another cap ship, or especially ships sporting STS type weaponry, it's not going to stand up long against them. It doesn't have enough armor to handle that. It doesn't have really the meat to be able to stand there and fight. One of the things people make fun of with some of the ships like the Idris and the Javelin is that they have so many hallways, all these hallways. They're meant so if the left side of the ship is hit by a massive hit of say these ship-to-ship weaponaries, or massive cap ship torpedoes, the idea is you could blow the whole side off the one side of the ship, and they still have hallways to safely get back and forth on the other side of the ship, to always have access to all the points they need to get to be able to get people that just got knocked out in that one hallway to regenerate in the med bay, grab gear that's sitting there, and get back in the fight, get back in damage control, get back in engineering to get us back to bring the game plan back. So I think that's important distinction here. It is not the same play style as other ships. So make your fleet decisions not in a bubble. And while I'm at it, just the same disclaimer I always say, talk with your org mates, talk with your friends, people in the same time zone, especially that you find yourself playing with, even if you don't consider them super close. Chat with them. If everybody has the same ship, you don't need 20 Polarises. You need a couple at most for a reasonable size organization. So you might want to look at another kind of ship. Maybe we talked about the Liberator. We talked about these even bigger ships, dare I say it. Then these other vessels like the Krakens and your Idrises, which you need even less of those ships. So just bear that in the back of your mind that all these ships need to be crewed. I'm not saying at the same moment, of course, but you want some diversity in your fleet. We talked about the Crucible earlier as well. That's another great support ship for all these big fancy ships, because if one of them gets busted, who has to come out and repair it and save it? The answer is the Crucible. The answer is these ships. Even on a small scale, small ships can make a huge difference. SRVs, for example, we were just testing to see if we can move a Herc with a pair of SRVs, for example. I'd love to be able to test it on the cap ships. So advanced, exciting topics for another day, but just know that you don't have to get everything this moment, no matter what the fruit of the moment is. Be sure to do your research. Be sure to talk with your friends and org mates and make your own decisions. All right, I'm off my soapbox. Let's keep talking. So, not everything was in the Holos. This is a secret Holo, and this is suspected to be a reasonably sized mining vessel from RSI. The rumor mill, if it is to be believed, is that it's a large specifically, ship that's a miner, designed to mine services. Smaller than the Orion, bigger than the Mole is the logic here, based on just inferring, based on if it happens to be large. You can note they have a placeholder item there. You can note on the little screens there's no messaging. I did want to add it. I didn't want to feel like I'm trying to hide anything, but there's not much to show. So on to the Galaxy. The Galaxy is in the Holo. It's extremely detailed. On these little blurbs here, it does not mention building buildings. It talks about the highly configured for cargo, medical, or refining operations. It does not talk about the construction module. But on the original marketing it did, and then at CitizenCon they said that's exactly what this is. They had a white box Galaxy sitting up there, and they literally said this will be the module. So the Galaxy is going to be very valuable, but I would suggest, if you're considering the Galaxy, just pick up the Galaxy base. You see a pattern here, just like I talked about earlier with the Endeavor. But back to topic. The Galaxy base is going to be extremely valuable, and in general, if the history repeats itself, modules cost far less than the ship to purchase in game. You can also pick up the modules later if you don't want to earn in game or have to keep rebuying if there's a reset in the future, whatever. You can always pick the module up later. So don't feel obligated to like, I have to have a module today. So if you're looking at the Galaxy as like a baby pioneer to do up to the third tier of building materials as we understand it in construction, everything but what the Pioneer does, the Galaxy base is a solid ship, and you can CCU to that thing relatively easily. For my case, I used a 400i, and I have a Galaxy base CCU, which I have not applied. I'm just sitting on it, waiting. And that's what I call my exit strategy for the 400i. I enjoy my 400i now, and then later on, when the Galaxy is in, I can apply that Galaxy base, and then I can use that with any module I please by buying it in game. The Zeus is in the Holo here. I don't know why there isn't screen information talking about the Zeus to explain which variant it is and what the deal with it is, but this is your Zeus in the Holo. This does suggest, and highly suggest, that the Zeus is not going to be a straight to flyable in IAE. I don't know why that became a rumor. I don't know who created that rumor, but I've seen it on 2 different Discords, so I just wanted to say it, just to kind of clear the air. I never intended the Zeus to be a straight to flyable for IAE. It's just too soon. You know, the last time we saw it is in white box. The Holo looks pretty good, but I don't think it's ready for prime time. And on to the Percy. The Perseus is a unique ship. It's expensive in real world, but it's not expensive in game, where I think it's going to fall in the price brackets. It's a great ship. You can have this thing lightly crewed, say 3 people, ideally 4, so you have an engineering person, especially with the new crew subsystems running around. But in general, I could squeak by, I think, with 3 people in this thing, and I'm going to try to and test it out, because that's something I'm very interested in. If you can run this thing like a Redeemer and suddenly have a much more powerful platform that has more ammunition space and has bigger weapon systems, for certain applications I can see an amazing use case for this Perseus. It's just I would not pick this up with in-game, with real world anything. I would literally just pick this up in-game, buy in-game. It's just so overpriced for what it is, unfortunately. That's going to do it for my IAE coverage for now. I did miss one small thing I wanted to go through. I don't have enough footage to edit. I don't have enough coverage for my Galaxy. So I just want to mention, the rear of the Galaxy is a little undefended, and I'm putting it mildly. So just bear that in the back of your mind. The Galaxy is not a direct combat vessel that's like designed for against small targets that are real nasty. So just keep that in the back of your mind. It will need an escort. You can bring a Pisces or something really small into the back. Pisces, of course, has 4 size 1 weaponaries when it's fully outfitted. That's not really that much, but it's better than nothing to help cover its side. And don't forget, you can keep spinning the ship to defend it. But I just wanted to add that that the Galaxy has that limitation, especially because I think the Galaxy is going to be very popular. You'll notice that I focused on certain ships more than others. It's because I have information on them, and also 2, I feel they're going to be very hot for this sale. So I feel like I want to prime you up to just think critically about these ships. It's not me picking on certain manufacturers or certain ships. It's more of just, getting you all the facts. So, yeah, enjoy your hype, enjoy the fun, enjoy the action. It's just try to do it in a way where you can look back at your hangar and go, I'm happy with how it ended up at the end. That's all I'm trying to say. That's all I'm saying. So if I don't catch up with you before IAE, and I probably will, but if you specifically, you listening now, don't watch one of my videos between now and then. I wish you a wonderful IAE. I wish you a great holiday season we're starting to get into, and I hope to catch up with you soon. Okay, is the coast clear? All right. I'm going to show you something really special here as an extra bonus. This is my first ship, the Aurora LX. So when I first started the game, I didn't have a lot of money. And this was near and dear to my heart that I could afford an Aurora LX. I was an original backer only because of a 5 USD paint. And my first ship after that was the Aurora LX. And I thought this ship was amazing because I could eventually put it into the hangar module and be able to actually check it out. And it had the leather seat, which at the time I didn't realize would create a trend, and it seems, where I actually appreciate ships that have a little bit of hint of luxury, particularly the Phoenix and the 600i Explorer. And of course the 325A, which I heavily use as a workhorse. The Aurora LX, though, was truly unique in the sense of it didn't stand out because of some special adapted abilities or anything. It looked comfy and it felt great. And the Auroras in general are quite a weird ship. You got doors on both sides. You barely have any space in the middle. And the weirdest thing about it is it actually does have a bed, but the bed is quite. I'm not a claustrophobic person, but that bed is pretty tight, and it almost feels like your character shouldn't even be able to get in and out of that bed the way the animations are. It seems like they're bumping your head your whole time. So it's a good thing it has that leather padding around it from the Aurora LX. Now this is an MR, which is like a standard one. This is much more common because a lot of people got these with some of the starter packs. And you'll note it's not that much different than the LX. But once again, the biggest thing was the fancy, really comfy chair and some leather accents, as they say. How much of that actually is there? And there might be a slight upgrade on the lasers, maybe. I don't know. I will say this: the Auroras were so outclassed. They had a very, very cheap upgrade to the Aurora LN, which was in a modernized version of the Aurora that actually can stand its own in Arena Commander because they were doing so poorly in Arena Commander. Because as a reminder, you had a hangar module to just stare at the ship and check it out and enjoy it solo. And then you had to jump into Arena Commander with the ships you owned to actually test them out and really have them kind of fight other players and NPCs and such in the future. Thank you for letting me share that with you. Fly safe. Happy IAE. Happy holiday season start to you and yours. Take care.